Welcome back to another episode of NRL by Jellyman here on Thursday, the 27th of April. Shooting it a day late, just as obviously an extended week of NRL and AFL and getting on top of things this morning. But obviously looking at round 8 in review, our picks from the weekend, stats and player and team consistencies for the weekend ahead, and also previewing round 9. But jumping straight into things, looking back at last Thursday, all the way ago that was, obviously South beating Penrith 20-18. Very interesting finish in this one. Obviously Crichton scoring all 18 points for the Panthers, Mitchell scoring a double, Tass scoring that one late, and Cook scoring one early. But this one was made up, I guess, for all those losses that South have had against Penrith, maybe apart from the grand final across the last couple of years. But the South just kept in it like we've seen with them all season. In those bigger games, they've just stayed in it. And they come home strong towards the end. For the Panthers, can't take too much away from them there. A couple of plays late where they got spread out wide, but that's just late fatigue there. The next game, obviously the Friday night game, the Eagles versus the Broncos, up there in Darwin, ended up being torrential rain, as expected and as mentioned. Broncos winning 26-16, mainly through the middle in these ones. I mean, the hip drop tackle was a big one in this one, a few sin bins, but the better team won on the night. Obviously, Parramatta also coming off a short turnaround last week would have affected that, especially up in the rain up there in Darwin. Moving to Saturday's games, the Sharks beating the Bulldogs 33-20. Still the big concern for the Sharks is allowing 20 points to the Bulldogs, who are very well undermanned. The Sharks obviously not covering the line in that one because of Mulitalo elbow out of bounds. Millimeters in it, unfortunately. And unfortunately, that was a couple bets down the drain for us as well. Moving to obviously the other Saturday game was the Cowboys and the Knights. Cowboys winning 18-16. Big concern for the Cowboys and both sides still is that scoring of points. I mean, it wasn't too clean of a game. And I mean, if Knights kicked that conversion through Miller, they actually tied up and it goes to golden point, but not too much else to take away from that game. Moving to Sunday, so the Dolphins, massive comeback against the Titans, winning 28-26. Obviously, the Titans were up 26-0, scoring a lot of their tries before the 30-minute mark, and then nothing after that. I mean, the big concern is how they fell away for the last 50 minutes of the game and unable to score, and then also letting the Dolphins back into things there as well. The other Sunday game was the Sea Eagles beating the Tigers 22-16. I guess a couple of injuries for the Sea Eagles. The Tigers playing out there at Campbelltown were sort of fought tough, but once again, another case of just where are they finding their points from. I mean, Stain scored, Carousel scored, Toa scored, but other than that, where are they going to find their points for the rest of the season? And all this is the Sea Eagles getting out a gritty win there. Moving to Tuesday's games, two high-scoring games. So the Roosters beating the Dragons 27-26. Once again, this one shouldn't have been close. 3 tries within, I guess, 10 minutes within that 50 to 60 minute mark. That's the big concern. That was prior to the Radley sin binning as well. And then them holding on late with Luke Keary kicking a field goal. But it shouldn't have got to that point. We believe in that. Those tries were pretty easy through the middle as well. And Sloan opening up. Also getting Mogo a triple as well, 3 tries there. The other game on the Tuesday was the Storm against the Warriors. The Storm meeting the Warriors 30-22. Meany scoring a double. Munster also scoring an Olam and Grant. DWZ scoring a double for the Warriors. But this one was a good game. The Warriors were just decimated by injury. I'm pretty sure by the end of the game, that last 8 minutes to go, they had no players on the bench. So to fight it out like that, especially against Melbourne at Amy Park on the Tuesday on Anzac Day, it was a super gritty performance. But big concern for probably the Storm, I guess, is them allowing 22 points and a lot of points prior to that 50-minute mark as well. Nelson Solomola was impressive and unreal for them. Coming on here, it was super good, and he sort of made that big impact that sort of probably got them the win and the end of the game there. Going through our picks from round 8, so we had a multi sort of running, 2 different multis. So obviously the multi we recommended last week on this, that actually got up. But then the other one was the Sharks minus 11.5. North Queensland and Newcastle points over 36.5. That lost. Dolphins versus Gold Coast points over that one. And the Sea Eagles points over that lost as well. We missed out on our try scorer multi of 5 try scorers paying 33.36. We had Crichton, Cobbo, Young and Olakwatu all hit, but Tabuai Fido was the one that missed, unfortunately. On the Thursday night, we had the South to win at 260, so 2 units. We also had Graham to score a try as well, Crichton and Johnston. Johnston obviously passing late, getting Tass a try, and then to obviously not scoring, but Crichton being the scorer there. Graham also had a minimal opportunities as well, had a couple of opportunities in the air, but that's about it. The Friday night, we had the Broncos minus 3.5, that obviously won, and Cobbo and Farnworth together as a 2-leg multi, and then our same game multi lost that we only have 0.5 of a unit on. Saturday, we hit nothing, obviously the Sharks losing it for us. Mulitalo obviously not scoring there, did hurt us as well. And then in the evening game, we only had a couple units on anyway, which both sort of came to a close because of the Cowboys not getting up properly or getting up over the points margin. Sunday's games, we had both teams scored 20 for the Dolphins versus Titans. That was a hit at 299, 2 units on that one. Obviously, that finishing late. And then all the others were sort of try scorers throughout the day, not really hitting there as such. The Tuesday was a very good day. We had AFL and NRL multi, we had Roosters, Storm, and the Magpies. Obviously, that getting up for 3 units at 223. Then we also had multi. We had 2 different multis. So we had the Roosters with 1+ try, Manu and Tedesco. Also Storm with Cameron Munster, 1+ try, paying 13.75. And then we also had another one that was Storm 1-10 with Munster as well as the other 3 in there, which is paying 38.76 off the top of my dome. We also had the Roosters dash total points over 41.5 at 220, getting up, and Joey Manu, we had faith in him scoring at number 6, 265 on Sportsbet for 1.5 units. And our same game multi, that one didn't hit with Tedesco, Paulo and Fige. But then for the Storm Warriors game, we had the Warriors plus line plus 12.5, 3 units at 181. But that was sort of our picks and the overview for round 8. Moving ahead to round 9, and the consistencies coming ahead. So the Broncos, they've won 7 of 8 games, 42 plus total points in 5 of their last 7, 26 plus points in 5 of their last 7. Cobbo didn't score last week, but has scored in 5 of his last 6. They're allowing tries to the right and left winger. Heading down to the bottom, we'll come up from the bottom. So the Tigers, obviously, they have lost their 7 games to start the season, and they're allowing tries to the right edge back rower in their last 3 games, obviously allowing a try to Olakwatu last game. The Roosters, they've allowed 20 plus points in their last 4 games, and allowing tries to the left winger in 4 of their last 5 games. The Dragons, they're allowing tries to the fullback in their last 6 games, obviously Tedesco getting off that donut for the season and scoring a try, and then also allowing tries to the right edge in their last 6 games as well. South, Walker didn't score last week, but has scored in 4 of his last 5. Latrell Mitchell has scored a try in his last 3 games, and the Rabbitohs are allowing tries to that right edge, obviously with Crichton scoring 3 last week. The Eels, they've scored 20 plus points in 5 of their last 6 games. Cobbo, 10 tries in his last 7 and a try in 6 of his last 7 games. They're also allowing tries to their left centre, to the left centre of the other side as well. The Cowboys only managed 20 plus points in 2 of their 8 games, and they're allowing tries to the right winger. The Warriors, they've scored 22 plus points in their last 4 games, and obviously coming up against the Roosters this week, that's a big one. They're allowing tries to the left winger and through the middle as well. And last but not least, obviously the other ones will be in here, but the Knights, Marju, 1+ try in 4 of his last 5. Dom Young, 9 tries in his last 6 games, and Dom Young also 1+ try in 4 of his last 5 games. As always, they will be in the show notes, all those stats and etc. Looking at a quick look at the ladder, obviously the Broncos first, Panthers second, Warriors third, the Seagulls 4th, Rabbitohs 5th, Sharks 6th, the Storm 7th, and the Dolphins 8th. Just outside the 8 is the Roosters, Titans, Knights, Eels, Dragons, Raiders, Bulldogs, Cowboys, Tigers. So quite an interesting mix there, and quite a big game. Quite a big couple of games coming up this week. Starting to look into those now. So heading into a Thursday night, which will be this evening, the Sharks versus the Cowboys at home there at Shark Park at PointsBet Stadium. The Sharks are 141, the Cowboys are 293. The Sharks have won 8 of their last 9 games against the Cowboys. Feltz scored 13 tries in his past 15 games against the Sharks. And Mulitalo, be looking to get back from that missed opportunity last week. He scored 17 tries in 17 games at PointsBet Stadium. We obviously like the Sharks in this one. Mulitalo to score. Then having a look at a couple of insights here. So obviously for the Cowboys, they're allowing tries to the right winger. So that means not only Mulitalo on his side, but potentially Cobbo as well. And also the Cowboys have only scored 20 plus points in 2 of the last 8 games, or 2 of the 8 games of the season. The Sharks are allowing points, but expect that to, I guess, then to change that up potentially in coming weeks, or at least hopefully, and defend a bit better, especially as the Cowboys, who haven't been scoring that well and are a bit light in the forward pack at the moment, as such, with those big run meters, and especially off the bench as well. Looking at the Friday night games of the Eels and the Knights, the Eels are paying 150, Knights 260. The Eels have won their past 5 games against Newcastle. Gagai has scored 6 tries in his past 5 games against the Eels. And this is actually the Knights' first game at CommBank since 2020. Mike Acevo has scored 40 tries in 41 games at CommBank as well. So obviously look at the Eels and Mike Acevo. But looking at a few more insights in this one, obviously Para allowing tries to the left centre, which would be off the top of our dome. That's Bradman Best on the left there, and also Marju outside of him as well. So looking at those 2 as try scorers, obviously Sevo is a guarantee and probably a lock there. And then for the Knights, they're allowing tries to right wingers. So not only could Sevo score, our Dunster and Russell's side could get it, or Dunster and Penasini's side. Pensini has been scoring well as well of late. So looking at a couple of try scorers there through that edge. Next game on the evening is the Broncos versus South Sydney. Looking forward to this one. The Broncos are actually 221 at home at Suncorp, where South are 167. They do have a couple outs with Oates, Mem and Haas all out. So obviously a game without Haas is huge. Jock Madden comes into 5'8" there. Flegger jumps into the prop position along with Palacia. And then in on the bench is Jensen Hetherington, who come in there for the guys who are out. And obviously Arthurs comes into that wing position. This one's an interesting one, and I mean, we'll dive a bit deeper into it. But last season, obviously, the Broncos beating South down there, 32-12, and then earlier in the season, 11-4 in a low-scoring match. There's a bit of rain about in Brisbane or on the Goldie at the moment, but tomorrow looks to be cleared up. But we'll have to look into that one in a bit more depth, obviously with the guys who are out. Looking at also the turnaround. So the Broncos played last Friday, and South obviously played last Thursday. So they do have an extra day's break. But a couple of stats here. The Broncos defeated the Rabbitohs twice last season, as already mentioned. But the Rabbitohs have won 7 of the last 10 games at Suncorp. And Broncos centre Staggs has scored 6 tries in his past 5 games at Suncorp. And then also Johnson has scored 13 tries in 14 games at Suncorp as well. So a few try scorers there. Doesn't really say much about the head-to-head. But it's something we'll be having to have a look further into, especially with the Broncos coming back from Darwin last week, that bit of travel they had to have, and South's obviously staying in Sydney. Things are looking towards the Souths just at the moment. Next game on the agenda, obviously, Saturday games, the Raiders versus the Dolphins. The Raiders have won only 1 of their 3 games played in Wagga, so this one's obviously down in Wagga Wagga. And Dolphins coach Wayne Bennett has won 9 of his last 11 against Ricky Stewart. The Dolphins are allowing a lot of points at 24 points per game. Hudson Young, 3 tries in his past 4 games as well. This one obviously being in Wagga makes a complete difference. Milford potentially could be back in. They've also named Edric Lee. Bromwich is back in, also Mason Teague. Out for the Raiders is Smith, Shields and Kotrick. In comes Rapana, as well as potentially Schiller. And Xavier Savage has also been named as well. So he may come off the bench or he may jump into the starting side. We'll need to see how that all looks. But this one's a 50-50 game, really. Checking the weather in Wagga Wagga. It looks to be fine on the Saturday during the day. But yeah, we'll have to look a bit more in depth into that one. Just because the Dolphins have been playing okay, and obviously that comeback last week shows they're always in it. And they're actually probably the better side than the Raiders. And with all that news around Jack Whiten this week, we'll see how that affects the team. Next game on the agenda is the Sea Eagles versus the Titans. The Sea Eagles have won 3 of their last 4 games against the Titans. The Titans have actually have been outscored 71-52 in consecutive losses. And Garrick has scored 96 points in 6 games against the Titans. And the Titans have won 5 of their last 7 games at 4 Pines Park. So quite a few interesting stats that go against each other there. Looking at this one, The Seagulls have quite a few injuries. I mean, Tom Trbojevic has been named. Parker and Schuster go out, which means Cooper Johns comes in. Tuipulotu is also named, so he's in. Tuolangi's also named as well, so he'll come into number 12. This one, I mean, depending on health of Tom Trbojevic, there should be a lot of points potentially scored. The only reason why the Tigers didn't convert as much as they could have against the Seagulls last week was because of their own demise, not the Seagulls' defense. So if the Gold Coast Titans can put a score on, this could be an upset, or look at the Titans plus line, keeping it close in this matchup, just with the Manly Seagulls injuries. Garrick's actually in at centre. Not sure how we feel about that one, but obviously Saab out in that wing. Harper and Tuipulotu there as well. The next game of the evening, the Panthers versus Tigers. This one's actually out at Bathurst. Tago is out for the Panthers. Peachy in. Rest of the lineup's pretty much unchanged from last week. They have also named quite a few players through the bench. For the Tigers, a couple of changes again. Charlie Staines out, Cobbo out as well. In comes, so Dane Laurie's once again been named, but he's in the reserves. Brent Naden's also been named, he's in. And Nofaluma's also in as well. Sean Bloor, he's on the reserves as well. But a couple of stats this one. The Panthers have won 9 of their last 11 games against the Tigers. The Panthers have won 5 of their last 7 games at Bathurst. The Tigers have conceded 24 points or more in their past 5 games. And the Panthers obviously had the best defensive record after 8 rounds in the NRL. This one is interesting as it's out in Bathurst. Last season they played off throughout the Origin period. It was 18-16, and then prior to that, in August, the season prior, was 30-16. Obviously, Coruscant playing against his old squad. Panthers have won 20, Tigers 460, but a big interesting start on the season is not a lot of those minus 12.5 lines have been covered as of yet this season. So even though the Panthers are a team that could do it, and they should do it, they've also smacked a couple of teams of late, and they're coming off a loss. So unfortunately for the Tigers, with them coming off a loss, and then obviously that game against the Knights, they could absolutely smack the Tigers. I mean, they come off a win against Manly and Raiders 2 games prior to those close games. And they also got a bigger break compared to the Tigers, who are coming off a Sunday game last week. So this could be a Panthers whitewash. Moving to the Sunday games, so the Warriors versus the Roosters, both sides played off last week on the Tuesday, so a short turnaround for both. This one's at Mount Smart Stadium in Auckland. Chance is out, Tauranga out, and also Harris out. They've named young Tai Tuapuki at the back there, at fullback. And then for the Roosters, they've had an out of Daniel Tupou. Corey Allen comes there on the wing. And then who else is coming in for them? They look pretty much unchanged. They've named quite a good depth of bench. For the Warriors, Valalia and Alec are on the bench there. Who comes in? Pretty much the rest of it is unchanged. Just obviously with those sort of 3 main outs, but they've got a bit of depth there. This one's an interesting one. It's 50-50. I mean, the Roosters are 148, the Warriors 266. The Warriors actually haven't lost in New Zealand this season. They're 3 from 3. The Roosters have won their past 6 games against the Warriors, though. Edward Cossie has scored 6 tries in 5 games at Mount Smart. The Roosters play in New Zealand for the first time since 2018. 6 Warriors players haven't ever won against the Roosters in their history either. So quite a few interesting stats there. For the Dragons versus the Dogs, moving to the next game, we're 50-50 on that Warriors-Roosters game just at the moment. We'll have to look a bit more in depth into it. The Dragons versus the Bulldogs, this is also a 50-50 game. A bit of a poo-slinger, to be honest. The Dragons, the way they finished last week, though, they should beat the Bulldogs. They've had, obviously, Tata Mogo goes out. Both the Figures are in on the wings, which is going to be super confusing because one's Matthew and one's Max. But obviously looking at both of them to potentially score as well. And then outs for the Bulldogs is just Davey. No real proper names there. The Dragons have won 5 of their past 7.